We're on page 4 now, and we're still solving these quadratics by completing the square. Oh, and notice this would not factor. You can't find two numbers that multiply out to 3 and simultaneously add up to 10. So here's the big payoff for learning this right here. Separate the x terms from the number first, and at the same time that you're doing this, leave yourself that gap for writing the number that's going to make this side a perfect square. Oh, we've got 1x squared, so we say half of that, 5. 5 squared, 25. So I add 25 there, and that means you got to add 25 on the other side. So what does this change to? What goes in the parentheses? Negative 3 and 25, 22. Okay, what goes in the parentheses? Same letter of the alphabet, same plus or minus, and always, always, always half of that. Okay? And now it's just like page 1 again. I keep repeating myself, but the main thing here is that you'll learn this. And if it's a little boring, I'm sorry, but trying to get you prepared. Square root of the square of x plus 5 is just x plus 5. Square root of 22 is like 4 point something blah 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 blah. So we just leave that written like so. And last thing to do to get the x all by itself is add negative 5. It says plus 5, so add negative 5 on both sides. So the solution can be written like this. This is the way it would be written in the back of the textbook if we had a textbook with this problem in it. Separating it into two solutions for good old Alex, we'd write negative 5 plus the square root of 22, comma, negative 5 minus the square root of 22. And you could put this in a calculator and get it into decimal form. Same thing here, but that would mean doing some rounding off. We don't want to round off unless there's a good reason to. On to number 17. Okay, get the x's separated, so add 7 to both sides, and it's going to say x squared plus 5x equals 7. And half of 5, I'm going to think of half of 5, let me write this up here, is 5 over 2. And when I square that, I get 25 over 4. So I'm adding 25 over 4 to both sides of the equation. What do we pop in the parentheses? Same variable, same plus sign, and half of 5, 5 over 2. Now on the other side, we need to add 7 and 25 over 4. I'm going to remind us that 7 is the same as 7 over 1. And if I want a denominator 4, just multiply the top and bottom by 4, and I get 28 over 4. So 7 is equivalent to 28 over 4. So 28 over 4 plus 25 over 4, that's 53 over 4. I take the square root of both sides. Oh boy. Plus or minus on the numerical side. Okay. Now just as a side note, the numerator is not a perfect square, the denominator is. So watch what happens. On this side, of course, the square root of the square of the expression gives us just the expression, the x plus 5 halves. On this side, I'm going to write plus or minus square root of 53. And I'm taking the square root of 4, changing it to 2. Now, if that's annoying, remember that square root of a fraction, as we learned in a previous lesson, can be split up into separate square root of the numerator, square root of the denominator. So the square root of the denominator gives us exactly 2. And that's nice because in the next step we're going to have a common denominator of 2, aren't we? I'm going to add negative 5 halves to both sides, and I'll have x equals negative 5 halves plus or minus root 53 over 2. And I can make this into one fraction, negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 53, the whole thing over 2. And if you really want to, or you have to because of Alex, this is what we would separate these into. Negative 5 plus the square root of 53 over 2, comma, negative 5, subtract the square root of 53 over 2. Okay? Number 18. Let's take away 15 from both sides so that we have x's separated from the numerical part. And I take half of this would be negative 1, and negative 1 squared would be positive 1. So I add 1 to both sides. I add 1 left side, right side. Now this side gets rewritten. X minus half of that. On the other side, negative 15. Are you feeling a little suspicious? You should be. What can we say right now? You're going to take the square root of this side and get x minus 1. You take the square. Oh no, we can't do that because it's a negative. We cannot take the square root of negative 14. You can't find something. There's no miracle thing to put in here whose square comes out negative. So we can stop right here and say no solution. Okay. Number 19. Now here's the first instance of a real pain in the neck. We've got a coefficient here. We'll deal with it. But first I'll separate the 8 from the terms with x. I'll add 8 to both sides. And I'm not leaving the gap just yet, because the next thing I got to do is get rid of this 3 by doing this. I got to divide everything by that coefficient. So if you think, if there would have been a 2 there, would I be dividing by 2? Yes. If there was a 7 there, would I be dividing by 7? God forbid, yes. So we divide by 3, and now I have x squared minus 7x, now I'll leave some space, equals 8/3. Okay, this is about as challenging as they get in our course anyhow. Oh, now I got to do half of 7, a half of negative 7 would be negative 7 over 2, and square that. What do we get? 49 over 4. So I got to add 49 over 4 to both sides. Are we having a great time with this? Oh boy. All right, so the left side, how do we rewrite it? Same letter, same sign, half of that.